Ladies and gentlemen, the video that we're going to be going over today is the most important laws of the universe that you need to know. Were you taught these in schools? Probably not, but we're going to learn them today, and they come from two books, the Kybalion, can't remember the author's name, and the Four Agreements, also can't remember the author's name, but these are very fantastic books that you must read. And if you're not going to read them, then I'm just going to spill out the laws for you and the things that you need to do. And why do these matter? Because this is what you're going to be doing when you're trying to navigate your relationship problems. This is what you're going to be doing when you're trying to understand yourself better. This is what you're going to do if you're going to attract a member of the opposite sex. If you're a dude, you're looking for a lass. If you're a lass, you want a dude. So we're going to start with the 7 Hermetic principles of the universe. Now, there are different books that touch on the very same stuff. I think there's a book called The 10 Laws of the Universe. This is 7 from the Kybalion. It's all the same stuff. Anyway, I've made a print here. You can probably find this on Reddit and print it out. It's good to just keep somewhere handy and you can read it. So, law number 1, the principle of mentalism. Everything is mind, the universe is mental. You know what? The book is going to do a fantastic job of explaining what that means. Okay, so I feel like I'm not qualified to explain exactly what that is per se. I'm just pointing out to you that this is real, this is a thing, and here it is, the law of mentalism, or the principle of mentalism. Everything is mind, the universe is mental. Probably sounds really strange up front. But for me, what does this mean for me, right? How do I use this? When we understand the other laws of the universe, it does make more sense. But basically, there's this thing in the book called the All, which is a mechanism of how God operates. And part of this All does operate in the mind. A lot of the universe operates in the mind. I can't confirm this necessarily. I think this is more of it's quite esoteric. But a lot of the big chunk of the universe does operate in the mind. Law of correspondence. As above, so below. As below, so above. As within, so without. As without, so within. I was hoping to find some type of scripture to go with this, but this is one of the most important principles of the universe. The principle of correspondence. Very important, because you're going to see a lot of esoteric people talking about this one. A lot of coaches, including myself, like the richest, fanciest people. It's a big deal. This is a big deal. And it's like, what does it mean? As within, so without. What does that even mean? It just literally means in, with, in you, equals without you. The with part, you could disregard that. But it basically means within the proximity of you, you could say. As within the proximity of you, so within the proximity of outside of you. Same. There's a scientific name for this. It's called the micro versus the macro. And there's a bit of a picture you could look at here, kind of like that. If this is the micro and this is the macro, small versus big, it's kind of the same thing. In, out, exist, non-exist. It's kind of like a spectrum there. The principle of vibration. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. I don't really want to go into that one, but basically think of it as a fan spinning really fast or very slowly. And the more faster it moves, it's almost barely visible. So in a sense, there's a lot of things that vibrate. Even the inanimate objects around us actually do vibrate because they've got atoms and quarks and things like that. I didn't bother writing down the rest here because I wasn't even going to go over them. But because I've got this print here, I may as well spill it out. The principle of polarity. This is something that I kind of touch on quite a lot. Everything's dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Hot and cold are the same. Opposites are identical in nature but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. This is one of the most fascinating principles, the principle of polarity. And you could say, like, where does light end and darkness begin, kind of thing. For me, let's say someone gets rolled up with me. I could take that at face value. I could take that at surface level and get offended. But because I know that there exists more than one thing, especially in my mind, if I'm the cause of what's around me and everything's just reflecting around me, then there is more than one answer that exists. Is it true that someone's rolled up and being accusatory and unjustified in their approach towards me, perhaps? You know, they're getting angry at something. My response sets the stage. So I could say to myself, damn, I'm so offended by this. I'm butthurt. I'm going to shut down. I'm going to retaliate. I'm going to take out revenge. Or I could just be calm, playful, relaxed, take advantage of the situation by looking at the opposite of the spectrum, perhaps even using a bit of empathy, not seeing the person who's being accusatory as a villain, but rather as an ally. Things like that. I think I just glossed over that because this is a very personal experience that I'm actually talking about that even happened to me this morning. And it's just like, because I'm so familiar with this, or I'm becoming more familiar with this, I'm able to sort of snap into it a little bit easier on the go, especially when tribulation and turbulence happen. And that's what you want. As soon as turbulence happens, as soon as tribulation occurs, you're rejected, unchosen, blah, 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 telling yourself stories. Remember, there's always an opposite to everything. And there's an opposite within the opposite. Man, there was a very incredible opposite that I thought I was discovering the other day. It was something along the lines of, imagine that you were very smart in a particular field. And this is actually talking about myself too. And you have all these explanations that describe why a thing is the way it is. But then I ask myself the question, what if the very explanations are the very thing that bring about the problem? It's such a fascinating way to look at things. And last night I was reading a book called The Invisible Game by Bobby Reer, and he mentioned some friend of Warren Buffett who used to use the inversion technique, which basically meant instead of asking how can we win, he's like, how can we guarantee that we will fail? Very interesting. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. A lot of this stuff you can find very compelling similarities in the Bible, including the principle of rhythm. This one is probably more prevalent in the Bible by recollection than something like vibration. Rhythm, if I had to recall something, it'd be like, you know what, I can't think of it on top of my head. We're going to move on. The principle of cause and effect. This is a fairly standard one, probably the only one that's ever really acknowledged on a general consensus. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for a law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. True, there are lots of different causes that can bring about a single effect. But just know, if there's smoke, there's fire. That's basically the principle right there. If there's smoke, there's fire. And you can't really have fire without smoke, can you? Final one, the principle of gender. Kind of like the polarity one with the opposites, but it's just a different expression. It's like gender isn't everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes, so masculine and feminine. This is why we have male and female on the physical plane between living animals. All right, so we just quickly covered all of the 7 Hermetic principles, the laws of the universe. Let's quickly move over to the 4 agreements real quick, because when you compare 2 books and you see how they collide so well to each other, it makes sense. I've included some scriptures for the 4 agreements because it's really the 2 middle agreements here that, to me, are the most important. So the 4 agreements, definitely worth a read. I think it changed my life. I read this book twice. The first time I read it, I glossed over it. I didn't really even know what I was reading, to be honest. You have to read this book at a time when you need it, I think. because that's when it really sank in for me. Because the first time I read it, I barely even remembered a single thing about it. Agreement number 1, be impeccable with your word. And agreement number 4, always do your best. Live by these standards. These are standards. Self-imposed boundaries. Standards and boundaries go together. There are 3 scriptures I found here that go hand in hand with these agreements, which are basically the agreements themselves. Ecclesiastes 9:10. Whatever you do, do with your whole hands, or do with your whole heart. Matthew 5:37. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Make sure what you say has integrity. And this is what Proverbs 22:1 states, is that your integrity is worth more than gold. It's worth so much more, your integrity. So do value that. I do know the meaning of this because it's really very important. Now, agreement number 2, don't take anything personally. This helps me big time in times of tribulation and turbulence. Like this morning, for example, when someone's chucking hissy fit. I don't take things personally by default. Now, I do my best to try and not take things personally. Because if I allowed someone else's opinion to define me, then I'm not really in control of my own integrity, am I? I'm not really in control of what happens next. I will let someone else's opinion of me in the escalation take the reins. Don't take anything personally. Like, really disconnect yourself from things. And this is one of those opposites that you can look at. You can take something personal, or you can not take something personal. Don't make assumptions. And this is what I've been kind of saying in the last few videos I've been making too. There's this thing called the law of assumption, right? Let's put that aside for now and don't even think about that. Don't make assumptions, primarily relating to negative assumptions, really. You're making assumptions, preemptive assumptions about how someone is. And there's this thing I call the anti-theory, or the anti-thesis, as I came to learn it. Anti-thesis or anti-theory, which is basically just an opposite, really. That's what it really means. So what's the opposite of an assumption? You know, the truth, you could say. The opposite of a lie is a truth. So you don't want to be making up lies about someone. You don't want to be telling yourself false stories if you don't have all the information. A lot of the time, we're just piecing in pieces of information together to make these assumptions, these stories, collecting pieces of facts. Imagine you trying to solve a murder mystery. It can feel so compelling to accuse one of the 10 suspects of being the true murderer based on very little evidence. But as more and more pieces of evidence come together, the picture becomes clearer. So don't make assumptions, because this can backfire really, really badly. And there you go. These are the laws of the universe and the 4 agreements that I personally use to keep me going, to make things make sense. And still, these are things just worth learning on their own because they're so mysterious, esoteric, fascinating. This one, let's say you're stuck in one of these, right? I was probably stuck in this one for a little bit too long, for a while. Cause and effect. But the law is that there's multiple causes for multiple effects. So if you're stuck in one, you could be trapped. Look at everything. Look at everything. For example, in my last video when we're talking about how to attract a partner of the opposite sex, I basically say that in order to attract a member of the opposite sex, you have to be attractive by default. As your underlying default, you have to just be attractive. And so by being attractive within the proximity of inside you, it will reflect on the proximity with outside you. And there's another way you could say this. Instead of reflection, it could be ripple effects and echo relocation coming back to you. It's lightning fast communication. And then things take time, that is true. I don't know where time fits here exactly on the top of my head, but time, when it comes to like weight loss or trying to move from A to B, the process of change, where you're trying to move from A to B, right? That can take a bit of a transition period. And all you have to do is enter a bit of a sleeping state, a calm, resting state on the journey, where just like when you're playing video games all day, time flies. I've done this for months sometimes. Time flies, it just disappears out of nowhere. And you want to be in that same state where time just disappears out of nowhere when you're transitioning from A to B, preferably by implementing useful habits to get you from A to B. All right, I hope you learned something here. My goal here was really just to introduce you to these laws and what they mean for me and what they can mean for you. Read the books, the 4 Agreements and the Kybalion, if you're not sure how to spell that, Kybalion. Very good stuff. The author, he's a good writer. He's written different books, but he never took credit in his own name. And I don't know where he got these ideas for, but there's a lot of books from the same time when this was written, a lot of books back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, including a book that I would recommend right now, The Ultimate Book to Getting Whatever You Want. I can't remember the name of it. Good book. It even has a formula, a scientific formula that backs this up somewhere in the book. But yeah, Kybalion, the 4 Agreements. And even things like macro and micro, right? If you want to listen to someone who's really smart, there is someone called Alex Hormozi. You may have heard of him. I recommend him. He sometimes might touch on these, but there's one person in particular I think you're going to love. Sam Ovens. I think he's the daddy of all the internet daddies we're seeing. Sam Ovens. And he even, he talks about why your brain might be scrambled. And he talks about the micro and the macro. And a lot of that stuff is just different representations or layers or spectrums or even realms of similar things. And these are people worth listening to help us just be better at attracting members of the opposite sex and just making money and feeling good about ourselves.